Okay, so the other thing which I thought I'll spend a little bit of time is how do you actually analyze the data? Now, you have been given a worksheet on some radio astronomy data using OT radio telescope. I think Desh has given you some exercise. So this is what typically the data looks like. Okay. Now, obviously, there is a pulsar hiding somewhere in that data. That's what I believe. So this is the Vela data, Prakash.
Yes.
Okay. So there should be a pulsar hiding somewhere in that data. Okay. So typically you get something like this coming out of a telescope. Now you want to extract information out of it. Okay. So there are two components here. One is the noise and the other one is the signal. Okay. For astronomy, the signal is also noise. Okay. There is no difference between so it's one type of noise to the another type of noise, and I think Desh must have covered this to some extent. That the reason why astronomical signal is also noise, okay, because uh, many of the sources are thermal in nature, so you will have a thermal noise. Some of the sources are non-thermal, but still it represents a noise. So the brightness of the source with the bright point which you see is just like any other noise. Okay. And of course, the instrument, which is the radio telescope, also produces a noise. So when you are looking at a blank part of the sky, you will mostly see the noise produced in your radio telescope, and there would be no signal. But when you are looking at a bright part of the sky, or you are looking at a source, at a star, like a radio pulsar or something, you would not only see the telescope noise, superposed on that telescope noise, you would see an additional component of noise, which is what astronomers call as signal. Okay. So this is something, especially for the students who are from engineering background and maybe electronics background, the connotation of signal and noise in astronomy is different from the connotation of signal and noise as far as the communication engineers are concerned. Okay. So that's one of the things. Now, so you need to actually want to extract signal out of that. Now, here there is a pulsar, and you have had a lecture on pulsars by Devabrati, I think, and she must have explained to you that pulsars are neutron stars which are highly magnetized and which are rotating, and they emit their emission in the form of beam which is anchored to their poles. So every time the star rotates, the pole comes once in the rotation time in your line of sight, and you see a bright flash of light. Okay. So the signal which is coming from the pulsar is not continuously there. Okay. It is periodic. It comes once in the rotation cycle of the star. Okay. And it appears like a pulse. That is why these sources were known as pulsating radio sources or pulsars. Okay. That's the full form of pulsars. So it is periodic, and it so happens that these stars are neutron stars, which are very massive and which are very compact. They have very large moment of inertia, about 10 to the power 45 grams centimeter square, and they are rotating. They are very compact with a diameter of about 10 kilometer or so. So typically, maybe 1/5 or 1/10 of the national capital region, or say 1/5 of a large city like Mumbai or Chennai. Okay. So looking at that scale, you can imagine that they are very, very compact stars. And within this compact star, you have a mass which is about 1.5 times the mass of our sun. Okay. So the densities are very large and the moment of inertia is extremely large, and they rotate fairly rapidly, typically rotation periods of the order of a second. So the whole star rotates in a second. Contrast that with the rotation of the Earth, which takes 24 hours or about 86,400 seconds longer than the rotation of a pulsar. Okay. So because of this, the rotational kinetic energy, which is just the moment of inertia into omega square, I omega square, is extremely large. And because the rotational kinetic energy is so large, it is very difficult to slow down these stars. In other words, the rotation of these stars is very, very stable, is ultra stable. And that ultra stable rotation means that the periodic pulse signal which we see are also highly periodic. Okay. So even though what you see on the screen is pure noise, okay, and you can actually look at its statistical characteristics, which is what I think Gitanjali has plotted. So if you can go down in the histogram, that is how it looks like. Okay. This is the familiar normal distribution curve, which has a mean of about 0 and standard deviation of about 40 or 50. So it's basically noise. But if you have a pulsar in this signal, it is periodic. So if you can do a harmonic analysis of this signal, you should be able to collect the power, the noise power, which corresponds to the power coming from the pulsar in a Fourier transform bin, which is corresponding to the inverse of the period of the pulsar. On the other hand, the noise which is introduced by the telescope is completely white. White noise means noise which has a frequency content from 0 to infinite frequencies. That is, the amplitude of the all frequencies is identical. So since the telescope noise is white with the identical amplitude of all frequencies, the pulsar signal will stand out on that. And I think that is what the exercise in this worksheet is all about. Okay. So one is doing a harmonic analysis, and harmonic analysis means taking a Fourier transform. And a computationally efficient way of taking a Fourier transform is called as fast Fourier transform. So that is what you will do in Python. You'll use the Python function FFT to actually get the fast Fourier transform. Can somebody tell me what will you get? So you have a voltage data. When you take a Fourier transform of that, what are you likely to get? So your current data is a real data. Once you've taken a Fourier transform, what kind of data will you get? Can anyone answer that question?
We'll get a spectrum.
Yeah, you'll get a spectrum. But what would be the nature of the numbers in that spectrum?
So the x-axis will be the frequency range, and y will be the gain for the particular frequency or the voltage levels for a particular frequency.
No, so that is only half of the answer. There is something else you should get.
Or it's a imaginary number.
Right. So you have a, what kind of transform is a Fourier transform?
Linear.
Yeah. No, it's a complex transform, right? So if you have a real signal, you will end up with a complex spectrum. Right?
So we will have a phase and an amplitude.
Yes, you'll have a phase and an amplitude. So you need both the parts there.
Both.
Also, there is some other property of the spectrum which you should see. What other property of the spectrum which you see?
See the dispersion delay for the...
No, that's, we are going to the pulsar. I'm just saying, suppose there is no pulsar, it was only telescope noise. Then also you will have a Fourier transform, right? And which will have a amplitude and a phase. But what other things? So this is something to do, this is nothing to do with astronomy. This is something to do with Fourier transform. I'm just trying to see how much has seeped in. Okay. Desh has covered it extensively in his lectures, Fourier transform. But how much of that you have absorbed is what I'm just trying to see.
So if the distribution here is Gaussian, it's going to be a Gaussian even in the Fourier space.
That is one thing, but I'm talking even more basic than that. It's simply coming from the Fourier transform properties.
Probably periodic.
So I said that Fourier transform is a complex transform, right? And so what kind of properties a transform like that has? So let's say there are 1024 points which you have taken a Fourier transform. How many frequencies you will get in spectrum?
The same number.
Think a little bit. Okay, let me rephrase my question. How many unique frequencies you will get in your spectrum?
The half of the total points.
Why? Your answer is correct. Your answer is correct, but you justify that.
So as it is complex, it would be positive and negative. So we would be taking either a positive part or a negative part.
Okay.
Or we'll
That
do a Nyquist sampling. So
Okay, both the answers are correct to some extent. Okay, you will take either positive or negative, you said, but that makes an assumption that the positive frequencies are identical to negative frequencies. So, is that correct for a transform like that?
Yes, sir.
Right. So, Fourier transform has what is known as Hermitian symmetry. Okay. So that symmetry properties of the Fourier transform ensures that the positive and negative frequencies will be identical. So you can throw away half of those 1024 points. The unique points are only 512. And the other physical way of understanding is what somebody else answered, that there is something called Nyquist. What is Nyquist frequency?
Balchand, you're presuming real data, right?
Yes, I'm presuming real. Oh, that's Desh kya? Okay.
Yeah. So it's
Desh
worth insisting on that, that it's only for the real data that it's Hermitian symmetric.
Yes, yes.
but then Desh sir also said it's for real and asymmetrical data. So what was that thing?
No, the data which you plotted above
Hmm.
seems to be the real data, right? If you just go back to the earlier data, I thought it is only one time series. Yeah, this is real data, right?
Yes.
So,
And so what is meant by asymmetrical? Meaning you said real and asymmetrical.
Desh can explain. I don't know the context. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
So
All that I
what the
said is
context?
if you have real data, then the Fourier transform will have Hermitian symmetry. And that is where what Balchand was pointing out, that the other half on the negative side of frequencies is not having any independent information. And so it can be thrown away.
Okay. And if it is an imaginary data, then it will be an anti-Hermitian. So
If it is a complex data, then it is, it is different. Okay.
Right.
In fact, the two transforms are symmetrical in two domains. So you can have a complex time series being fed and you will get a real spectrum.
Then you might get even one-sided spectrum.
Yes.
Okay.
And for which the Nyquist criteria is different.
Correct. And that is also implied in astronomy. In fact, it is getting more and more implied when you do RF sampling, direct digitization. Okay, so these are all things which are very much used in radio astronomy. Okay, so it's good to understand those concepts. Anyway, so as I said, that all the power for the pulsar will then get collected in one of these frequency bands, and that will rise above the noise. If you had no pulsar signal, if you just had noise, telescope noise, what would be the amplitude in the spectrum? Is it related with some Fourier transform theorem? Does anyone know that theorem? There is a theorem which relates the power in one domain to the power in another domain.
If we compute the power in both domains, that would be
Parseval's theorem.
Parseval's theorem.
Parseval's theorem.
So you could actually do this experiment or you could do this calculation. You could work out what would be the typical power distribution only in the noise versus the power collected in one frequency bin as far as the pulsar is concerned, and see how that makes it easier for you to extract the pulsar signal from this apparently noise-like looking signal, which is sort of shown here. Okay. So I think that these are some of the things which I just wanted to sort of point out. But other than that, now let's say if you have got the pulsar, okay, and this is I don't know. So Desh, this is 1000 samples. Is the x-axis in seconds or it is in?
No, I have just plotted a part of it.
Part of it.
It's just number of samples.
I just plotted a small part. There is roughly. It's much more than this.
Yeah. So 32 nanosecond is one sample.
Yeah.
Okay.
So roughly.
Yeah.
So this is the.
Correct. So your data, I can tell you how big your data was. Just if you go down, what was the y-axis? Yeah, so it's about 10 to the power 4.
Yeah.
So 32 nanoseconds. So it's less than a second of data actually. Okay, maybe there is no pulse also in this.
The entire data are only 1 second.
Yeah. So this must be a fraction of second looking at the sampling time which UT sort of operates on. So to get the pulse, you will have to, and since they said 1 second of data, so there will be a certain number of pulses in this. So you have to choose the right place where the pulse is, okay, to be able to see how it looks without the things. Okay. Now, why are we taking Fourier transform of this? Can anyone, other than the fact that there is a periodicity which is there, there's another reason why we are taking a Fourier transform of this data. Can anyone say anything about that? No, I don't expect an answer here. I'm just trying to figure out if somebody has an answer.
So the pulses, like for a pulsar, will be symmetric. I mean, it will be periodic. So if we take a Fourier transform, like so, if there is any sinusoidal wave lying inside the data, like we can get the frequency of the data and separate that.
That is what we discussed, but that's not the only reason why we are taking a Fourier transform. There's another reason.
I think his question is essentially, why couldn't we take just the power as a function of time?
Yes.
For the entire band? Why do we need to analyze the spectral information in detail?
We need the phase information and how it is delaying, or
why do we need the phase? No, your answer is correct, but why do we need the phase information?
Sir, it's an electromagnetic wave, so I mean, you need, that's why.
Something related to rotation.